Why does Burger King's president want to talk to you about how the brand is doing? Wingstop is in unfamiliar territory, and some casual dining heavyweights are slogging through a softer consumer environment. Welcome to Extra Serving, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I'm editor-in-chief Sam Oches, joined by my colleague, executive editor Alicia Kelso. Alicia, end of a week. How do we feel about this week? Yeah, it was a kind of a mad week.
I like how you always try to start with small talk.
I try to start with
every week. Alicia, it's Friday.
Well, that's the thing. I always want to talk about how it's Friday, but our dear listeners are probably listening to this on a Monday or a Tuesday. I don't want to bring them down by sharing our joy at the fact that it is a Friday when they have to think about that whole week that's ahead of them in the future. So I always run into a wall and not know what to say. And here we are.
Yeah, I forgive you.
Thank you. Should we just jump into it then?
Since I made it awkward.
Since you made it awkward. Thanks a lot.
I'm not saying you're flawed.
What are you up to this weekend? But no.
Well, I can tell you the biggest thing about this weekend. My kid has a 5th grade dance tonight, so I'll be in tears in the corner.
Aww. Is he going to wear a suit?
He's not going to wear a suit, but he is going to zhuzh it up a little bit.
Okay.
And he'll probably be doing his hair for a good hour before we take him. And then tomorrow is Duke, Michigan. So by Monday, I'll either be in a really good mood or a really bad mood.
Well, Alicia, by proxy, I am a Duke fan too. So how are we such good friends when we have such clear battle lines between us on the sports field?
Well, are we friends? Maybe this is just a front. Yeah.
Welcome to the final episode of Extra Serving. Well, okay. Well, good luck to you in that regard, I guess. Is it the Big Ten ACC Challenge or something like that?
I think it's just a regular season game, but it's 1 versus 4.
Well, I just don't know why they're playing each other because it's conference play.
Yeah, I don't.
It must be that whole thing. Well, we have to talk about MACtion. We've got an undefeated team in the MAC, and it is, of course, my rival, but I'm still going to cheer them on from the sidelines. We got to cheer for the MAC team.
Bowling Green is going to upend their entire season tonight.
I hope that is true. I hope everybody listening to this on Monday is well aware of how Miami of Ohio is taken down by Bowling Green, the biggest sports story in America. And it's relevant to our podcast because, as we've talked about here before, Miami of Ohio, home to at least 2 CEOs in the restaurant industry. Julie Fels-Massino and Brian Nichol went there.
Yeah.
In addition,
Shallow went there.
Yep. There you go. There's a lot
of Chipotle.
Yep. Meanwhile, Ohio University, where I went, everybody was too busy partying. I take it back. Sam Chamberlain at Five Guys, he is an OU grad, so I've at least got one.
Well, by now we should all know that Joel Yashinsky of Burger King fame is a BG grad. I don't know if I'm not really any others.
All of those Duke, Harvard, Cornell graduates out there are listening to us going,
how cute.
How cute.
Their little MACtion.
They have 3. All right, let's talk about restaurant news. Interesting week for restaurants. Alicia, last week we talked about Burger King, talked about the momentum that they have built. Their same-store sales last quarter were up a couple of 2 points, I think. Comps were 2%. And in general, just starting to build some momentum, especially with this Whopper for You or Whopper by You program, which is all very exciting for that brand, especially as it's one of its chief competitors, Wendy's, is, doing what it's doing, which is not very good stuff. But this week, Burger King is upping the ante, and President Tom Curtis announced that he's going to spend 4 hours a day answering calls and texts from consumers. And they gave out a phone number that consumers can call or text. By the way, I have it right in front of me. I'm going to tell you what it is, too. So if anybody is has a pencil and paper in front of them, 305-874-0520. If you call or text that number, you're going to get a hold of Tom Curtis potentially. You've gotten a lot of feedback on this, Alicia. You wrote about this for NRN and have heard from a lot of people, and largely positive. Am I right?
A lot of people thought this was a PR stunt. It, on paper, very much looks that way. But then the feedback that I've gotten is, holy cow, he called me back. Or he texted me back. And I've asked people to share privately what they talked to him about. And there was a LinkedIn connection that I have. I won't share what he disclosed to me because it was a private conversation, but he outlined 4 or 5 bullet points on the things he wanted to see changed, at Burger King. That's the whole point here is, Tom Curtis wants to be a consumer-led brand. He's been with Burger King since late 2021, right before this Reclaim the Flame initiative went into place, in which the company spent a whole bunch of money to really turn things around. Because at some point in the 2010s, Wendy's surpassed Burger King as the number 2 burger chain in the country. Franchisees were not as profitable as they used to be, and it sort of just kind of lost its way. So they brought Tom Curtis on, and one of the first things he said was, everybody wear your logo on the clothes that you're wearing whenever you travel, when you go to restaurants. That is going to plant the seed and get people to, oh, I love Burger King, or I love the Whopper, or you know what, I went to a restaurant 2 weeks ago and it was dirty, so on and so forth. He said these anecdotes are super important, and it's a fundamental philosophy of his to collect these anecdotes to understand the priority on how the business is going to move forward. This phone number initiative is that on steroids.
Yeah.
Now, that for 2 weeks, it's going to be 4 hours a day, nights and weekends. I did test him. I sent him a text yesterday. I got an auto message. I was not providing Burger King feedback. I was just sort of testing it out. Tom Curtis is a Michigan fan. I just told him, go blue, beat Duke. He doesn't have time for that. I guarantee it.
Yeah. Get out of here.
But it's worth a try, Sam, right?
That's right. That's right.
But, this is going to happen for 2 weeks. They are going to shine some marketing focus on this because they want to be transparent and they want customers to know that they care on this really unfiltered feedback. After the 2 weeks are up, this program is going to continue in perpetuity, or as Tom told me, at least as long as he's there. They're going to, not do 4 hours a day because that's not feasible, but they are going to rotate among the leadership team and do, an hour here, hour there. It is going to be a big part of the decisions, like I said, that they make. And it is going to be as myopic. He has given me a couple examples. For example, if a customer in Pennsylvania loves our Whopper, but it doesn't go to the restaurant in their market as much as they would like to get that Whopper because that restaurant is dated or not as clean as it should be. The chain is going to take that feedback from this conversation with Tom and see if they can't prioritize a remodel at that specific franchisee. So this is as big an undertaking as it gets. I love this idea. Everybody in my inbox loves this idea. I want to think there's an important point here that I think is important to touch upon. Tom Curtis came to Burger King from Domino's. He was there during the chain's turnaround in 2009 when they solicited customer feedback about its pizza, changed the whole thing.
Yeah.
And now Pizza Hut is by far the biggest market share,
Domino's.
Pizza chain. I'm sorry. Domino's, the biggest market share pizza chain in the world.
Yeah.
Because of, that springboard. And so he did admit that there is a page here. He said history may not repeat itself, but it often rhymes.
Right.
So I think it's cool.
I love that reference, by the way, with that touch point to Domino's, because you can see this at work. And not to belabor this because we talk about him so much, but Kevin Hochman, did wonders at KFC, turning that brand around, and has been able to replicate that success at Chili's in a different way. But I think if you have experience turning a business around and you have that skill set, you can become kind of the fix-it person. I have a brother-in-law who's similar to this with hotels, where he's a GM of a hotel, and he has been at 4 different hotels in the last decade, and they keep moving him to the hotels that need help because he just knows how to fix something. And I'm not saying that is, some magic thing or that these people are special, but it's like sometimes people can just see when something is wrong and how to fix it. And sometimes those fixes are relatively simple, right? I mean, when we distill Kevin Hochman's blueprint for Chili's down, it's really not so complex. It really is a matter of go into the restaurants, listen to the employees, and fix the things they tell you are broken, and you will make them happier. Same thing with Burger King, right? Where it's just like, go into the restaurants, see where it's lacking, and listen to, in this case, the consumers and hear what the consumers think needs to be fixed and then fix it. It just, of course, when you have a multi-billion-dollar company, that's easier said than done. But it really starts with listening. The other thing I'd say about this too is, to me, it's a cultural thing. Last week we talked about the fact that a lot of Wendy's problems come back to this sort of instability at the top. All these executives left, and when your executives leave, all the way down, you have people who are sort of untethered from the business in some way, right? Because again, using a Kevin Hochman or a Chris Tomaso as an example, when you have leadership in place who are so dedicated to culture, are so dedicated to recognizing and validating employees and making them feel like they have a home, that this is where they want to be, it holds this whole system together and it makes people want to be a part of it. It lowers the turnover, which is costly, but turnover also leads to employees who are not as invested in the business and not going to provide the customers with a good experience. So all of this stuff is related. And I just think that somebody like a Tom Curtis, that Domino's experience, is a great example of how he's seen this before. He knows how to fix it. Now, I keep seeing this example or this whole story in my head as an SNL skit, and I see him like with a big smile on his face giving out his phone number. Cut to 4 hours later, his head on the desk, his hair every which way, and him going, "Stop calling me," because these things can go south
He
fast.
is worried his wife is going to get mad at him. He did mention that in our
I mean, you tell me, what president of a major global restaurant company has 4 hours in a day to give? That's what I want to know. But look, I hope this can work out for them, because I think it is a great initiative, and Burger King has some momentum, and I think this could really help get that, help to fuel that momentum a bit further. One of their competitors, Jack in the Box, reported some pretty ugly sales. I don't even want to say what they were, Alicia, because I don't want our children, through osmosis, to throw it in our face.
I was going to say, my kid's not listening to this podcast.
No,
but osmosis might get them.
Although I gotta tell you, Alicia, my 11-year-old nephew does listen to all of my podcasts, and he was the first. I swear. Hi, Theo, if you're listening. He has a 6'7" plushie. This generation, I don't get them, guys. I have 3 of these, and I don't understand where they get this stuff from. But this 6'7" thing has got to stop. Yes. Anyway. Jack in the Box's sales were down 6.7%. Oh, send help. Anyway, Jack in the Box, though, I mean, they've had problems for a while, Alicia. What is the main problem going on with Jack in the Box right now?
Is really going through it. They had leadership change the beginning of last year as well. Lance Tucker was named CEO. Gosh, I want to say in April. And shortly after he was thrust into that position because Darren Harris stepped down, he put into place this I'm sorry, I was going to say Project Fresh. That's Wendy's. He put into place Jack on Track to turn again, another turnaround plan, which we've covered at length over several brands over the past couple of years. Jack in the Box is part of that. This -6.7 comes on the heels of -7.4 last quarter and -7.1 the quarter prior, just to understand how deep it is, with these issues. I think the biggest issue that Jack in the Box has right now is it's over leveraged. I don't know if they grew too fast. I don't they had a big loss with their sale of Del Taco, which it bought into 2021 for about $585 million. They sold it in December for $119 million. You might want to fact check those numbers because I don't have them in front of me, but I know it was that significant of a markdown. They're over leveraged, like I said. What was interesting about the Jack in the Box call is, we always say, Sam, 3 data points make a trend.
Yep.
So we talked about Popeyes and Wendy's sort of steering too far away from their core and their operational fundamentals. Mm-hmm. Same thing here with Jack in the Box. They mentioned this. This is our 3rd data point of this round of this quarterly report round. Steered too far away from their core, and they're going to pull back on their LTOs to get back to that. Which Jack in the Box is pretty prolific on that. They're adding field teams, to restaurants to improve operations, which is exactly what Wendy's and Popeyes are doing as well. And then they're also continuing as part of that Jack on Track plan, closing a significant number of locations. They expect 50 to 100 to close this year. Lance Tucker, their CEO, said that progress is visible. I know in January, the company had more momentum toward the last part of the month than it had in the last quarter of the year. And he said that some of these initiatives are starting to gain some traction. Jack in the Box is also in the middle of a comprehensive 75th anniversary marketing campaign. So it's top of mind a little bit.
Yeah.
Bringing back some old, menu items that were popular back in the day. Bringing back some, the antenna ball that it was known for. Things like that. One thing that did not come up during the call is Jack in the Box is in the middle of a pretty intense proxy battle right now with its board.
Right.
Its investor day is February 27th. This proxy battle was brought forth by Sardar Biglari, who is prolific in terms of activist investments. Also, with Cracker Barrel and El Pollo Loco, to name a couple. And there has been a lot of back and forth about whether or not to retain the chair, David Goebel, who has been there, I think, 20 years. And so that will be really interesting, to follow. There's a lot of impatience about the sluggishness of the turnaround plan. And we see in the most recent quarter numbers that there might be some improvement, but -6.7 is still, nothing to really write home about. So
Particularly that, yeah.
Final point here, Jack in the Box is also, mostly a burger place. So their margins got crushed.
Yeah.
I think they dropped from 23.2 last year to 16.1. This is a narrative that I will be following, and we'll talk about, further.
By the way, quick tangent on that matter. I had an opportunity to speak with Michelle Korsmo, President and CEO of the National Restaurant Association. We'll be sharing my episode of that podcast next week on the Takeaway feed. Next week being this week, for those of you who are listening. But I was digging through the State of the Industry report, which, Alicia, I know you were digging through the State of the Industry report. Our colleague Joanna wrote about the State of the Industry report. This is what the association puts out every year. I don't know if you caught this number, Alicia. Only 42% of operators in 2025 were not profitable.
Yeah.
42%. And that was up from like 24% the previous year. So just as far as profitability goes, Jack in the Box is not alone. However, 6.7%, especially when you're a value-oriented brand, I just think, and we've said it before, we said it last week, but it's really hard to understand what's going on to some degree because value, again, with that narrative, value's driving the bus here. And McDonald's is up, and Burger King is up, and some other value players are really up. But Wendy's and Jack in the Box, which is like Jack in the Box is like even more value oriented than most of its burger competitors, are down. And so one of the things you wrote about this week was about that LTO, that fact that LTOs, maybe some brands are starting to pull back on that strategy because it's not working. This idea that, this sort of time-worn tradition of rolling out seasonal products to get fans excited to come in, maybe that strategy is not right for this environment. Alicia, tell me a bit more about your reporting for that story, why it seems like the LTO is not working like it used to.
I like your point, this environment, because I think that's important to home in on.
Yeah.
This environment is as challenging as it's ever been. Inflation is just not budging. And so these cost pressures that we saw in that Restaurant Association State of the Industry report is the biggest issue that operators are dealing with. That's evidenced by the profitability number that you threw out.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to focus on four-wall profitability and blocking and tackling as long as we're in an environment like this, especially beef, concepts. Beef is historically high. And after listening to, we'll get into this, but after listening to Texas Roadhouse's call yesterday, I don't know when, maybe 27 we'll get out of this, but I think that the interesting narrative that was derived for that specific story was that Popeyes and Wendy's went way overboard on LTOs. You know, we saw a Takis meal at Wendy's, we saw a pickle menu at Popeyes.
Yeah.
Both of those concepts really had some deeply negative fourth quarters. They are getting back to their core. Burgers for Wendy's, you know, bone-in chicken sandwiches for Popeyes. Conversely, we saw McDonald's have a really strong fourth quarter. McDonald's doesn't really do a whole lot in terms of LTOs. They might have a new McFlurry here or there, but their Grinch meal, which was really successful, was their stuff just
Right.
packaged different. And they've had that playbook since the pandemic when they came out with the Travis Scott meal.
Right.
It was just a marketing, you know, addition, a marketing label on the stuff that's already there. You know, and Chili's, I think, is to your point, a typical case study. They avoid LTOs altogether because they know it confuses customers, and it really complicates things for the back of house. And again, going back to blocking and tackling in this environment, did we go too far on LTOs? Some companies have some success here. Taco Bell is a great example here, but Taco Bell has a menu where you can just sort of, you know, puzzle a different, you know, picture together.
Right.
Not to be dismissive of the effort from their innovation team, because I did see those, you know, the work from that kitchen in California, and it is pretty impressive. But I think there is a case to be made after 2 consecutive years of record limited time offers per Technomic data. I did talk to Technomic's managing partner, Joe Pollock, and I asked him, you know, the whole point of these LTOs is to turn the tide on traffic, which has been stubbornly negative. But traffic remains stubbornly negative despite these historic rates of LTO launches. And he said, imagine how bad it would be if we didn't have all these LTOs.
Yeah.
So it's an equation that needs to be figured out. Some brands might get away with it more than others. Brands that are coming from a position of strength, like Taco Bell, like Chili's, like McDonald's, probably have more wiggle room to get a little innovative on the menu and throw new things out there, new news out there. The brands that are not in a position of strength right now should probably retrench and focus back on the fundamentals, the core, the blocking and tackling.
Well, and again, I mean, this is fresh because I'm going through my reporting right now for the March issue. But just to go back to Chili's for a second, and again, hi Kevin, hope you're enjoying your run. What Kevin told me in our interview that he learned from Procter and Gamble, right? And again, going back to all these people who came out of Procter and Gamble, they went to Yum, then they went everywhere else. One of the things the lessons they learned was understanding what is your core business, what is your core brand built around, what is your hero product. Stick to that. Just rally around that and get that as great as possible. And that is how you win. And he had a couple examples. You know, one example he used was like a couple of years ago when the whole quinoa trend came up. And he just used that as an example of like a trend pops up like this. And you could incorporate that into a Chili's menu probably fairly easily, but it's not their core. It's not part of their core. It's not a hero concept for them. And so they deflect on those trends and that pressure to go in that LTO direction and instead focus on, you know, doing their burgers really, really well. And I think this is true if you look at a lot of other brands that are doing well right now. It's because they didn't, you know, go out there with all these new items and try to, you know, kind of shine or wave the shiny thing in the face of the consumer. Instead, they said, come here for what you usually get here, but you're going to be more impressed with it this time on this visit and want to come back and get it again. So it's I don't know. It's bizarre because to your point, like the LTO probably still working for a lot of other companies, but I don't know.
Let me ask you this, if I can. Would you go to Jack in the Box for a specialty beverage?
Interesting question. I would probably not go to any QSR for a specialty beverage. I'm now, I would say if I'm already at said QSR because of my kids and I'm in the mood for a specialty beverage, perhaps.
Chick-fil-A's got some good specialty beverages, by the way. You're missing out.
Chick-fil-A? Did you say Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I trust me. Okay, here's the thing. Quick tangent on Chick-fil-A. So Chick-fil-A's new beverages, the sodas, the soda floats, or what do they call those? I keep craving them and wanting them. And I texted my wife, Katie, the other day. She was like, I'm going to Chick-fil-A. Do you want anything? And I'm texting, I want that soda float. It was like 11 a.m. And I'm like, I don't know if now's the time for that. I need to have that for dessert sometime.
Yeah, you
I'm
gotta
up in my
live.
head. My point here is I'm the wrong consumer to ask that question to Alicia
You gotta
because I'm
live. You
all up
gotta
in my
live
head.
more, Sam. One
My
life.
gut would
Get the
disagree,
soda.
Alicia.
Well, the reason I'm asking is
Yeah.
because we're fresh off this Jack in the Box call where they're talking about going back to the core and less LTOs. Today, I just wrote a news item that they're launching matcha. And so that was really interesting to me. It seemed a little conflicting. Maybe you can get away with LTOs on the beverage side, and that is obviously high demand, high margin. But it seems like we're in, and no disrespect to Jack in the Box, this is a desperate environment for tons of brands. There's a handful I can think of that don't have the need to throw spaghetti against a wall to figure out what works. And that just seemed like a really interesting launch to me, because I wouldn't think of Jack in the Box for matcha. Dutch Bros just launched it, Starbucks, so on and so forth. But anyway, we'll see how it does.
And it's a perfect example of that's not their core offering. Even honestly, if a Sonic rolled out matcha, I'd be like, yeah, sure, because Sonic beverage is a little bit what they do, right? And so that's a perfect example of like, are you just following the trend, or are you trying to develop a new item that is very complementary to your existing core product offering, right? So beverages right now are, there's just a lot of attention on beverages. Obviously, they're low cost, high margin, right? So that's why they're very appealing to a lot of companies. To some degree, Jack in the Box probably figures, why not? What's the worst that could happen? It ain't beef. So I don't know. It is a really interesting environment with all this stuff. So let's talk about Wingstop, because speaking of interesting environment, Wingstop, sort of similar to a Chipotle, here's a brand that for 20 years has been growing. And over that 20 years, surpassed even KFC as far as sales are concerned, to be, I want to say, are they the third or fourth largest chicken chain? I believe them and Popeyes are kind of neck and neck.
I think so too.
We'll find out soon in our top 500 for sure, as what they were last year. Suffice it to say, though, Wingstop has been one of the hottest fast casuals, and they just closed 2025 with negative 3.3% sales. Their fourth quarter down 5.8%. Their comps down 5.8%. Wingstop challenging, though, that they were lapping a pretty big quarter the year before. But Alicia, is it chicken competition? What seems to be wrong with Wingstop?
I'm sure that's part of it. We talk about all these brands kind of correcting course. Wingstop had meteoric years in 23 and 24. They lapped 10.1. It's not like they were lapping low single digits. 10.1 is astonishing. So let's pump the brakes. Wall Street liked their results. There's a reason I'm not a billionaire investor, because I don't really understand.
Wouldn't mind being a billionaire investor. Just saying.
Down 5.8, traffic down, but their stock, rose, and investors cheered. And I think, Sam, that they did admit that they were in a challenging environment. I do think that it is worth noting this was their first full year decline in more than 20 years. That is a very similar story to Chipotle. So there could be a broader conversation here about the luster of fast casual. We're past the honeymoon phase on that segment. And I also think that the reason Wall Street wasn't really, scared from these results is because there's a lot of tailwinds for Wingstop. They just rolled out their smart kitchen system wide. That smart kitchen has reduced time by half, from 20 minutes to 10 minutes. It's a big deal for someone who wants wings. And that the smart kitchen has been in place at company-owned restaurants for longer, and those company-owned restaurants have a higher AUV than franchise locations. So it's kind of proven. There's proof point there. Wingstop is also launching a Club Wingstop loyalty program. The objective here is simply more frequency. We do know that most loyalty programs generate more frequency and higher check. Wing consumption is not a frequent situation unless you're like a college dude, you know, not to stereotype, but the Wingstop's core customers come in about once a month.
Right.
You know, they want to up that a little bit. Even just one more visit a month can have a tremendous impact here. Wingstop also has a new ad campaign called Wingstop is Here. That's a customer acquisition strategy. I think that will work because there is some brand awareness that needs to be, I think cultivated here. And especially as Wingstop continues to grow. And I think that is the big tailwind here is Wingstop has a 10,000 unit goal, and domestically and internationally, it just keeps opening new locations. As a small footprint, it can do that in a cost intensive environment. I also think it's worth noting Wingstop is gaining customers among higher income consumers who are significantly less pressured now than their lower income consumer cohorts.
Right.
So there's a lot that Wall Street likes about Wingstop, despite those numbers on paper from Q4 and full year 2025.
I want to talk about something you pointed out there, Alicia, about that wanting to drive customer frequency. So, my episode of Takeaway this past week was with Seth Cohen, the co-founder of Sweetfin, Los Angeles-based fast casual that it has been a poke fast casual for the last decade since it started. Earlier this year, they introduced new warm bowls with cooked proteins. Some new sides, some salads. They developed this with Chef Daniel Patterson. And it was an attempt to basically say, poke is not dead. There's still demand out there for poke, but their frequency was pretty stagnant. They wanted people to come in more often, and people were not coming in more often for poke. So they widen the aperture a bit on their menu. They add some new items that still fit within the sort of personality of the menu, which they call California Asian, but are going to be like, if you come in on Monday for poke, you're going to come in Thursday for this cooked salmon bowl, right? And Seth and I had this great conversation around whether or not that really narrowed, focused menu, if the era of that focused menu is over. Because when Sweetfin came up and when so many of these fast casuals came up, as you might remember, it was kind of this sort of common knowledge that you wanted to have as small a menu as possible that you could execute really well. Sweet Green, it was salads. Kava, it's the Mediterranean bowl, right? You have all these fast casuals that came up with a very focused menu, and a lot of them, if not all of them, of late, have really started to broaden that menu. And I think it's part of this conversation that we're having around LTOs and your core product. And it comes back to Wingstop wanting to drive guest frequency. You have to ask yourself, well, are wings too narrow a focus? Does Wingstop need to start widen the aperture on their menu a little bit? Now, of course, they have some other things in sandwich and things like that. But I just wonder, what's the right move here for restaurants? I'm curious what you think about this, Alicia, because on one hand, if you broaden that aperture a little bit, widen the aperture on your menu, you could drive guest frequency and attract new customers, but you add complexity to your menu. You certainly add cost to your menu. And maybe 5 years from now, we're talking about how important it is to focus your menu and have a more simplistic offering. I don't know, Alicia, what do you make of all that?
They just need to launch beverages.
Yeah, just need to add a matcha and call it a day.
No, I think that it would be dangerous for Wingstop to widen it too much. They do have sandwiches, which is a big part of the reason they had such a tremendously successful 2024.
Right.
And so, anything further than that, I think would erode the brand, and look at Raising Cane's. It's a perfect example of sticking to what you know and just chugging along with your head down. And hey, we offer chicken sandwiches and wings. And I do think Wingstop's biggest issue this year was that it mostly it's comps. And I hate saying that because, you've got to, that's the whole point of the game, is to improve on comps. But all those tailwinds are not menu focused. They're not going to throw spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks.
Right.
And I think frequency is the most important thing here, because right now traffic is so hard to come by that you have to go for frequency. That's why we're seeing so many loyalty program launches and updates across the board. I've never seen a loyalty environment in 16 years of coverage. And I'm seeing companies pulse into loyalty that I never thought would have a loyalty program before, because frequency is the name of the game now. And Wingstop's very much going to play that with a loyalty program. And I think wings are a good concept to have a loyalty program because they're always kind of top of mind.
Yeah.
You just need something like a Michigan Duke game, to inspire you to get them.
That's a good point.
So, I think that I don't know that they need to widen the menu even more.
Yeah, agreed. All right, we got to talk about a couple of casual dining heavyweights that had a kind of mixed bag of results this week. I would say trend toward more negative, although let's start with Texas Roadhouse. Texas Roadhouse continued a winning streak as far as same-store sales goes. Texas Roadhouse's same-store sales were up 4.2%. Its traffic was up 1.9%. So on paper, looks great. Texas Roadhouse, they just keep turning out positive results. However, poor Texas Roadhouse, of course, their menu is like 100% beef. I mean, it's just like all beef.
Plus 50%. Plus 50% of their best.
I was a little off on the number there, but just a little bit. Texas Roadhouse, of course, this is a steakhouse. Beef is kind of the name of the game, and we know beef prices are historically high. And Texas Roadhouse, their margins were not there. They went away. What's the deal, Alicia?
They still have some margins.
They still have a little bit of margin. But they were
a little bit. I want to spin positive here because I'm a Louisvillian.
And because Texas Roadhouse is still a great brand.
And Jerry Morgan gets on these earnings calls and he just yeehaws his way through it. I just say every single time. And what was cool about this call is they were celebrating their 33rd anniversary. And if we could, 15 years of sales growth going back to 2010. Wow. The only quarter that they were down was pandemic quarter. Yeah. So a consistent case study and consistency on same-store sales increases and traffic growth.
Yeah.
Which we just talked about how hard that is to come by, not for Texas Roadhouse. And so they did, even during December, which was really challenging for Texas Roadhouse, I think they were only up, and I say only in quotes because they were still up, like a little over 2% on same-store sales in December because of that they had a strong impact from weather, as sit-down restaurants tend to do. But they came out of the gate in January, Sam. I want to get this number right because I was like, holy cow. They came out of the gate in January. The first 7 weeks of the first quarter were up 8.2%. 8.2%.
Good for, and that was considering Fern, even with Fern having happened.
We had Fern. Yeah, we had Fern. So, there was Fern.
We had Fern.
But, you can't talk about a steakhouse without talking about beef. And I just hate that conversation. It's so out of their control. Yeah. They do have most of their beef prices for the first half of the year locked in, about 25 to 30% for the latter part of the year. The foreseeable future is hard to predict on beef prices. There's some herd, equation that goes into it.
I don't know how cows work, but
we had Sam and Alicia. Why Sam and Alicia aren't CEOs a couple weeks ago? Today is why we're not CFOs,
and why we're not farmers, apparently.
Right. Although my father-in-law is a beef farmer. So
okay.
Maybe he can come in and be a guest and explain this all to us. Texas Roadhouse is going to take 1.9% pricing at the beginning of the second quarter. They will still be significantly underpriced on full service. I believe that will put them 3.6% in the second and third quarters. And when I reported the CPI last week, the CPI for full service was above 4%. So they're still underpricing. That has been their sweet spot. That is how they keep plugging along, is they invest in underpricing their peers. They invest in underpricing general full service inflation. Their value proposition is unmatched because you get those peanuts, you get those rolls, you get a scratch made side with your entrees. That's their bread and butter. And in this environment, they're going to keep plugging along. Beef prices be damned, to the conversation that we have continuously had, I think, for the past year. They are zooming in on beverages. They have mocktails and dirty sodas that are doing well. They're rolling out a couple more technology pieces that will help them with efficiency, including a new kitchen display system. They're testing handheld tablets for, their servers, things to get a little bit more efficient as they navigate these higher beef prices and lower margins because of it. Their margin, by the way, fell 309 basis points because of that. So it's just, again, they are going to be okay, but it's just a tough environment for a beef-centric concept. We talked about with Jack in the Box too, you know?
The word that kept coming up when I talked to Michelle Korsma yesterday was resilient. This industry is resilient. I mean, just what this industry has been through for the last 6 years is incredible. This too shall pass. Unfortunately, it'll pass and something else terrible will come along. That's been my lesson from the last 6 years. It is really amazing when you think about, I'm sure you saw these numbers in that State of the Industry report. Since 2019, food costs are up, I think 36%, and labor costs are up, I think it was 38%, somewhere in that ballpark. And so it's remarkable to consider that labor and food costs both being up close to 40% in the last 6 years. And yet, the restaurants, they soldier on, and most of them have not taken price equitably, right? Like they've taken, some have gone 25, 30%, but it's not 40%. So it's amazing to watch these companies continue to jump hurdle after hurdle and just figure out every solution that's put in front of them. But I do think this is one that will at some point go away. But the word of the year for this year that I've heard, first from Technomic, now from the Restaurant Association, is cautious optimism. There's reason to be optimistic, but just, cautiously. Lastly, we got to talk about Cheesecake Factory, another casual dining heavyweight that for all intents and purposes, Cheesecake Factory did pretty well with the pandemic, came out of the pandemic in pretty good shape, has been doing okay. Now, however, last quarter down, same-store sales down 2.2%. Is this a symptom of anything, Alicia? Anything we can diagnose is going wrong with Cheesecake, or just a product of the environment that we're in right now?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's worthy of mentioning it was their first down quarter since early 2024. Like Texas Roadhouse, Cheesecake Factory is a case study in consistency. Traffic was down 4%. And they largely blamed the consumer softness. In the fourth quarter, we saw that all over the place. There was a really extensive, federal government shutdown that impacted consumer spending for a while. That weather impacted lots of businesses, especially sit-down restaurant places. So I think, like Texas Roadhouse, they have improved so far in Q1. I don't think there's a massive story here about Cheesecake, flailing or being desperate or anything. I think this is just a product of the environment. And I think it's worth noting that Q1 has improved. They are finding some successful traction on their lower priced bites and bowls, which is an interesting narrative, becoming more pervasive in casual dining. In general, as value consumers might not be able to spend on a full entree, so they'll opt for these lower price bites and bowls. We have GLP-1 consumers now to consider as well. These types of offerings are enticing to them. I also think Cheesecake has a tailwind because they're also going to launch a loyalty app this year. So going for that frequency play.
Yeah, fascinating to watch. I mean, some of these things, what's old is new again, right? When it comes to loyalty, because gosh, we were talking about loyalty pre-pandemic. Think of the pandemic, loyalty was a big deal. Now it's a big deal again. All comes back to traffic. That's just the name of the game right now, is how do you get your traffic up? How do you, again, like we were saying before, increase your guest frequency and just be in the consideration set for the consumer? At the end of the day, not to quote this report too much, but go get yourself the State of the Industry report, so I don't have to keep quoting it to you. 70% of customers said they want to order out at restaurants more if they have more money. Isn't that all of us, right?
Big opportunity.
It's a big opportunity. And they expect in 2026 for the food outside of home spend to be 53% of their food, of the overall food spend. And so, again, getting back to that idea, like there is opportunity. This is a critical part of consumers' lives, this industry. It's not going away, but you just have to clear every hurdle that comes your way and get to the other side. Alicia, speaking of getting to the other side, that's all we've got for this episode of Extra Serving. All right. I guess go Duke. Is that how I should end it?
I quit.
Should end the episode right there. Talk to you next week.